Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we got a couple of things to get into, but before we get started, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. So make sure you hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. Let's go to get right into it. And today, we play the Phoenix Suns. A game to get back on track. A game to bounce back from easily the worst game the Orlando Magic have played this season. Arguably the worst game the Orlando Magic have played in any iteration of the Orlando Magic franchise. Now you're bouncing back against a team that is right in the thick of the Western Conference playoff race. And they're in a situation very similar to the Orlando Magic as far as some of their circumstances. Number one, they are at risk of being deadlocked into the play-in tournament. Now, the difference between the Phoenix Suns and the Orlando Magic is that the Orlando Magic are 1 to 2 straight victories away from positioning themselves in a way to maybe leapfrog up the standings because the middle of the Eastern Conference is a little bit more compact in comparison to the West. But the Phoenix Suns, similar to the Orlando Magic, do not have a pick in this upcoming draft class, meaning that landing in the play-in tournament, regardless of whether or not they come out of it, does not benefit them in one way or the other, because either way you end up as the 7th or 8th seed with a very uphill battle in that scenario, or you end up outside of the playoffs entirely and you go home with no draft pick to move forward with. So, this is a chance for the Orlando Magic to do two things. One, get themselves back on track against a big-time opponent who is coming off of their own big victory, 131-105 against the Memphis Grizzlies, a game where, of course, Memphis not necessarily in the mode of trying to play a competitive basketball game necessarily because, they want to keep it close, they want to make it look good, but the goal for them is to be one of the top 3 picks in this upcoming NBA draft. This was a game where Devin Booker and Jalen Green as a backcourt combined for 57 points, and I think that they're going to continue to try to put strong games together as they try to solidify a top 6 spot in the Western Conference playoff picture. Going to be a difficult battle, one that's going to require some really flawless basketball, and the Orlando Magic want to be a part of what spoils that for them, or should want that, because it also acts as a twofold. For the Orlando Magic, this is a good Phoenix Suns team. Just like that Toronto Raptors team was a good Toronto Raptors team. So not only are you bouncing back against a good basketball team, but you're doing so in a pseudo playoff environment. Because for both the Orlando Magic and the Phoenix Suns to a certain extent, there is a bit of a do or die, win or go home mentality here. For every loss that the Orlando Magic continue to stack up, they bury themselves deeper and deeper into the play-in tournament picture, something that they easily could climb out of with a 2 to 3 game winning streak with how compact the East is. And for the Phoenix Suns, because the West is not nearly as compact but is still relatively close, in the middle portion, they want to play very flawless basketball moving forward to climb out of the play-in tournament. So you have two teams that this last week and a half, nearly every game needs to be a pseudo playoff game type of atmosphere. The Orlando Magic return back home for this game, and it's going to be important that they kind of snap back to reality after easily the most embarrassing loss in franchise history, and one that has not just Magic fans questioning the team, but I would also probably say that Orlando Magic players, maybe even coaches along the coaching staff, are questioning their team as well. So this is going to be a big game for Phoenix. You guys let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel going into this game, your thoughts, what you think the score will be, and some important things that maybe this team should focus on moving forward with teams like Phoenix in mind, because there's going to be a couple of these high-octane offense type teams that the Orlando Magic are going to face towards the back half of this season with games like the Boston Celtics at the end of the year where Orlando, they're going to have to bring their A game defensively. Next up, I thought it was really interesting. I saw this article before I set up, and I kind of made a little bit of a smooth pivot because I felt like I really, really wanted to include this in today's episode. And it was Bleacher Report described every single team in one word. And I thought this was hilarious, but also accurate. That the word that they described the Orlando Magic with was Cancun. But let me read exactly what the article says because I think actually that hilariously puts even more of a light on where this team is right now. It says the Magic, a popular preseason sleeper pick back when the East felt wide open, should be putting their best forward and hard charging into the playoffs. Instead, they just took a historic kick in the mouth, landing on the wrong side of an unprecedented 31-0 run as part of a team record 52-point loss. Afterward, Orlando coach Jamal Mosley talked about how he needed to have his team prepared for the physicality of the game. That's one of the more delicate ways you'll ever see a skipper call his team soft. The Magic are a mess, losers of 7 of their last 8 when they're falling to the lowly Pacers and failing to put up any resistance in a game with the serious seeding implications. You have to wonder whether this group has mentally checked out and moved on to its summer vacation plans already. And it's funny that they phrased it this way because I remember a few weeks back, it might have even been a lot sooner. It might have been a lot further back than this. Might even date back to just before the All-Star break. I remember mentioning the idea of maybe this team being mentally checked out, right? It seemed like the players are slowly but surely, maybe quickly now, starting to fall out of favor. Or I guess Jamal Mosley is starting to quickly fall out of favor with the players on the roster. The injuries continue to pile up. We've seen Franz miss time. Anthony Black is still out as well. Jalen Suggs has missed time. Paolo Banchero has missed time. Wendell Carter Jr. has missed time. We've seen pretty much every core player outside of Desmond Bane on this team miss time in some juncture this season. You pair that with the fact that the Orlando Magic just do not seem like they are progressing forward despite some of the moves they made over the course of the last handful of months. That's bringing in Desmond Bane, who has helped juice the offense to a certain degree, but defensively they've taken a significant step back. They bring in Javon Carter, and for what he brings from a leadership standpoint, offensively he still is a little bit lackluster as a backup point guard as far as shot creation is concerned as a backup player on the bench. This team is desperately in need of a shot creator on that second unit, and they just do not have it right now. And then you pair all of that with the fact that moves like Tyus Jones, having Jonathan Isaac on the roster. There's just certain players that are just not working out. Jet Howard is another one. There's just certain players that are taking up roster spots right now that do not fit the long-term vision, I think, for this team. And it feels like a lot of those things are kind of crescendoing at the same spot. Now, of course, they've been able to move off Tyus Jones. We haven't seen Jet Howard play very much, and Jonathan Isaac is out for the rest of the season and likely to be waived at the end of the year. So there are things that this team can progress towards moving forward, but as far as the current season is concerned, there's not much more that this team can do. Anthony Black can't heal any faster than where he's at, which he's actually still in the limited stage of his rehab process, where it seems like the only thing that anybody has recollection of or any kind of video evidence of as far as Anthony Black's progression is that he's doing dribbling drills. So nothing truly one-on-one, definitely not progressing towards any on-court action in the 5-on-5 setting. So the likelihood is that we might not see Anthony Black for the rest of the season. And although Franz Wagner is progressing in a much better manner, there still has not been any significant update outside of him coming back from the G League squad that signals that we're going to get a strong enough version of Franz Wagner to feel like he's going to be a real solid addition when he comes back. Now, I know that quotes from Jamal Mosley said that if Franz Wagner is healthy and ready to come back, like, he will play. There won't be any like minutes restrictions and things of that nature. They're going to bring him back in the fold. But with the state of the season, it's like, why? I think there is a certain element of this, and I think a lot of Orlando Magic fans agree with this. And I went to you guys' comments from last episode, and shout out to you guys. I mean, you guys are very active, and thankfully, a lot of you feel the way that I feel as far as where this team is and where the season is, because I'm going to be honest with you. I think that we are at a point where we are willing to accept the mediocrity of this season. I think rather than trying to push the envelope beyond where we know things currently are at the moment, and trying to optimistically look at things as, hey, you have 8 more games left. You have the chance to still be the 5 seed. Franz Wagner can come back. You play the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham comes back off of rehabbing from a collapsed lung, or maybe he doesn't make it back in time. All reports say that he'll be back before the end of the regular season, but nonetheless, right? Now you catch a hobbled or undermanned Detroit Pistons team, and although they've been resilient outside of these injuries that they've dealt with, whether it was Jalen Duren missing time, Isaiah Stewart being out, now Cade Cunningham missing time throughout the season, a 7-game series with playoff intensity without maybe their best player or a hobbled version of their best player gives the Orlando Magic a really strong chance, so on and so forth, right? Like, I've played these scenarios out in my head of like, okay, there's a world where all the Magic have to do is get hot for a week and a half. Now, remember, this is the same guy who predicted that this team is going to go anywhere between 72 and 6-3 through their last 9 games of the season, and so far that's not looking too great, with one of their biggest losses of the year coming during this stretch. Now, that doesn't erase the fact that there's still a chance for them to go 6-3 or 7-2 during this stretch. But I think we've all come to a certain reality that even if they do that, all that's doing is creating a bailout, a press in case of emergency, eject seat for those who are looking for a reason to still keep this team as is going into the summer, right? But if we go 7-2 going into the playoffs and we have a competitive first round against the Detroit Pistons, then we can point to the Anthony Black and Franz Wagner situation. And if those guys come back healthy next season, with Desmond Bane healthy, and we have that starting 5 with Anthony Black coming back off the bench, look at what we're capable of. And I stop and I say, it's not about personnel. Yes, a move needs to be made. I think a few hard decisions are going to have to be made. I think the Jonathan Isaac one is just the first domino. I think the idea of bringing back Mo Wagner is its own question. And I love Mo, but financially, in order to be able to create as much flexibility as humanly possible, he is, I believe, $5 million on the salary books. He's likely to be brought back, even if it's for another franchise tag, so to speak, of 1 or 2 years, 7-8 million. But that is going to be a question. Jet Howard, I think, is going to be a sacrifice this summer as somebody that I think is going to get like the Caleb Houston treatment. There's a world where I see that being realistically something that happens. I think Jet Howard gets the Caleb Houston treatment. I think that Jonathan Isaac, likely just based off the reports we saw earlier on last month from Bobby Marks, that cap flexibility change for Jonathan Isaac's guarantees, I don't think that was detailed at that time for no reason. I think that illustrates that he is likely not going to be on the team past this year, unless it's for a completely restructured deal of waiving him and then maybe trying to reclaim him on a more team-friendly deal that's maybe a lot more short-term and not worth nearly as much money, right? But that's another sacrifice. Many of us discussed, and I think a lot of you detailed it in the comment section. We'll talk about that, in another segment, but a lot of you talked about the idea of like Jalen Suggs being somebody we have to really take a look at. And I've been an advocate of this all season. And many of you, it's interesting, when the season first started, and even prior to the season first starting, when I originally started the Magic Latest podcast, a lot of you were not very fond of the way I spoke on guys like Jonathan Isaac or Jalen Suggs, as far as trade chips. A lot of you were not very big on him being somebody that was in conversations to be moved at the trade deadline or beyond. A lot of you were equally as upset about the idea of moving off of someone like Jonathan Isaac. And it's interesting to see how through the framework of how this season has progressed and some of the things that we've seen throughout the year, how many of you have quickly come over to my side of the pond. And that's not me gloating. I'm not trying to take my lap, but I think it goes to show that over time, when you see the way this team is playing, and you see the fact that it feels like they may have hit a wall, a plateau, so to speak, of how well they can actually play in the current form of their roster, and with Jamal Mosley at the helm and Jeff Weltman making the calls, that now that this team has hit a plateau, the only way to make a change is to do something drastic. For example, I'll use something that's more of a life example. When you're working to drop weight, and in the beginning, you're just going from being very sedentary and not doing very much to now you're going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. You're getting your 10K steps in, and you're being consistent with this for the first 3 to 6 months. You're going to see your weight drop, and you're going to lose anywhere between 50 to 20 pounds, maybe better depending on how clean you decide to eat. And you put yourself in a position where you've dropped weight and you've seen significant changes because your body went from seeing yourself not do very much activity to significantly more activity in comparison to where your lifestyle originally was set. But you'll notice around the 7 to 8, maybe even 9 month mark, that the weight will no longer drop, or it'll drop at a very slow increment, because the thing that you've been doing has gotten you to a certain spot where you now are plateauing. So the only way that you're going to be able to now drop the weight even further with those changes is to make another dynamic change to that in order to get to the next level. Maybe that's adding another strength training day. Maybe that's increasing your protein intake by, anywhere between 50 to 70 grams more per pound. Maybe that's 50 to 70 grams more of protein per day, not per pound, goodness gracious. Or maybe that's increasing your steps from 10K steps a day to 25 to 30K steps a day. Maybe that's dropping another, let's say, 300 to 400 calories from your overall daily intake, right? There's certain things that now you've already made these significant lifestyle changes that make you go from, lazy and inactive, or maybe sedentary with minimal activity, to now heavily increased activity that's now put you at a certain position. But after your body has become accustomed to that, you now have to make another drastic change in order to see any other further development. And I think the Orlando Magic are in that spot, right? The Orlando Magic have put themselves in a position where year after year they were able to draft strong talent. You get Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs. You have Paulo Banchero, Anthony Black, Tristan da Silva. You within all of this process, you traded for Wendell Carter Jr. You did get a Cole Anthony. You did bring in a Markelle Fultz once upon a time, right? And you make all of these moves on the margins. Under Jamal Mosley, you've been a top 10 defense or better over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. And you built an identity out of that while getting away with the fact that your offense was lackluster. And this year, you make a significant change of trying to make your team a better offensive squad while hoping to maintain the defense. But within all of that, the body broke down. The foundation broke down. You saw injuries across the roster. You saw lack of an identity understanding with a new player in the fray in Desmond Bane. And this team saw themselves up and down offensively and defensively, and we never saw a point where things really changed. It almost seemed like they finally found themselves at an erratic point where they tried to keep doing the same thing, change the personnel here and there. But I think that the injuries highlighted that there wasn't a true, fully formed identity that, regardless of who the player was that was in the lineup, this team was able to maintain a certain level of structure. And because of that lack of a fully fleshed identity, this team has hit a plateau. You're now a team that you're maybe going to win, anywhere between 45 and 50 games in a season at best. Probably closer to, if we're being honest, like, for example, this season, they're at 39 wins. This is probably going to top out as like a 45-win team, which is just about where they've been the last 3 to 4 years, is right there, hovering around 500. You're going to sneak in as anywhere between the 6th and the 8th seed. And because of the fact that you have a limitation on how well your offense can be, and in this case, your offense ended up taking a bump up, but your defense is now dropped from being top 5 to now middle of the pack at 16th, you're still going to top out as a first-round exit. all of that, the Cliff Notes version of that is this team has found a way, regardless of some of the things that they've done, like bringing in a Desmond Bain, like signing a Javon Carter at after the trade deadline. This team has not done very much besides stay exactly as they are. And because they've stayed exactly as they are for the last 4 years, they've been good enough to be a playoff team. Something that we've probably been able to say about the Orlando Magic dating pre Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Jalen Suggs era, right? Even during the Aaron Gordon, Vucevic, Evan Fournier era. What was the what did they used to call them? Very similar to Indiana with Victor Oladipo and those guys. It was like but I think Orlando embodied this a lot more. It was like a team full of very good starters. It was a team full of very good starters that we knew were going to be good enough during the regular season. They top out as maybe a top 4 seed if you're like looking at that Indiana Pacers team with Victor Oladipo. And we know what your ceiling is. And maybe you outperform it 1 year, but the reality is that like the team you are is a team you'll always be as long as you keep yourself as you're currently constructed. Now, I think the Orlando Magic have a much better foundation than those versions of the Magic or the Indiana Pacers because I think that Paulo Banchero has much higher upside than Aaron Gordon did at that time or that Nikola Vucevic did at that time. I think Franz Wagner has much better upside than either one of those guys. I think that Desmond Bain is a much better third option than Evan Fournier or Aaron Aflalo, right? So I think this team has more legs behind it. But I think the thing that's plateauing this team now is Jamal Mosley and Jeff Weltman. And they're first of all, I think Jamal Mosley has become too much of a pom-pom coach. I think he's one of those that thinks he's Coach Carter. He thinks that he can talk his team into, going out there and just playing basketball like it's Art of War. And quite frankly, in today's NBA, where X's and O's are much more important than they have ever been, I think, because the athleticism and talent is so much higher that being able to schematically put yourself in position sometimes matters a lot more than just how talented your team is. I think Jamal Mosley has gotten away with having a very talented team for long enough. And I think the injuries have exposed that when he does not have a talent gap between him and opposing teams, coaching off of just straight effort is not enough anymore, right? And I think that that's really put them at a certain spot where now the team needs to make really strong decisions. So when we go back to the word Cancun, I look at it as this being a team that might already be mentally checked out. I look at this as a team that knows that they've plateaued, that they've reached a wall, that they've reached a spot where they no longer can simply just be who they've always been. And I do think this is a team that needs to go home. I do think this is a team that really needs to look themselves in the mirror. And I do think this is a team that desperately needs to make some decisions. I know that was a really long-winded answer of basically saying that this team is probably, not even probably, that's a long-winded way of saying that the Orlando Magic need to look themselves in the mirror, need to rip the Band-Aid off and make decisions that I think all Orlando Magic fans have been calling for. But more so, I think that Cancun summarizes that the Orlando Magic need the season to end for them to finally address some of the elephants in the room. Because as long as there's still games to play, the narrative around the Magic being able to maybe build themselves into the sleeper team in the first round still lives. But once the season is over, they've missed the playoffs or they've gotten eliminated in the first round, that's actually when the real season starts for the Orlando Magic. Hilariously enough, the real season, you would think, hey, we're Lord knows how many games into the season now. Again, we only have 8 left. We're what's that, 74 games deep? You would think, hey, the season's been, hey, no. for the Orlando Magic, the true season starts the minute they're eliminated. Because the minute they're eliminated, the real questions become things that need to be answered. All of the stalling, all of the beating around the bush, all of trying to escape the inevitable are washes. Now, all your warts are under a microscope. Do the Magic extend Jeff Weltman? Should Jamal Mosley make it past this season? Who, as part of the Orlando Magic's core, is safe? Who are the 8 players they should protect going into what will be a very interesting expansion draft 2 seasons from now? These are the questions that the minute the Orlando Magic get the graphic on ESPN and Bleacher Report that say eliminated, the real season then starts for the Magic, because then the questions they've been dodging or had the luxury of being able to avoid all year long, they now come to light in ways that they can't ever avoid. And that's what I'm very interested. That's what I'm very interested to get into. Let's talk about our sponsor for today's podcast, Underdog Fantasy. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, assists, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. Use promo code BasketballFan to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Again, that's use promo code BasketballFan to let them know that the Magic Ladies podcast sent you, and that is Underdog Fantasy. Once again, thank you for sponsoring the podcast, Underdog Fantasy. Make picks and win money.
Must be 18 plus. 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska. 19 plus in Colorado for some games. 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia. And present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/play and get terms DFSTML for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 helpline at 1-878 or text HOMI 467-369.
So you guys had a lot of comments from last podcast. So this is going to take up the back half of the pod, and I'm going to end with a question of the day that I think will encapsulate my biggest thought or my most intriguing data point for this week. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. Again, thank you all for being super active, because, I mean, I really appreciate it, number one, for stuff like the algorithm and things of that nature, but also, again, really want to get a strong pulse of where everybody is, quite frankly, on the current state of the Orlando Magic. Because, I mean, as we come down to the last, final week and a half of the NBA regular season, I mean, we are here. We are here where now the big questions have to be need to be asked, and the harsh things need to be said. So let's start at the bottom. Jay Palaskis says, can't win with Suggs. Hate saying this, but truth be told. Hector says it's kind of like when Boston had Marcus Smart, very similar situation. Kassetic, Piedra says Suggs is a good heart and hustle player. He plays with his soul, but he's not a solid point guard, and he's not a shooting guard. Plus, the coach don't help much. Let me go to something that Hector says. And thank you, Jay, for your comment specifically. But let's go to what Hector said. This is what I mean when I keep telling you guys that the one-for-one comparison between the Orlando Magic's development story and the Boston Celtics is so uncannily similar. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. If you guys remember, how many iterations of the Orlando Magic, how many iterations of the Boston Celtics did they have to go through? Let's just focus on the point guard phase. Let's not even talk about the fact that they brought in Gordon Hayward, right? As a potential superstar option, all of the trade talk around the idea of going after Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant. Let's just focus on the point guard position. They had Marcus Smart to begin with. Didn't really like that long term. Isaiah Thomas took over, had 1 year where he was top 5 MVP candidate, Isaiah Thomas, and that, of course, did not live long. They go to Kyrie Irving, right? They go to Kemba Walker, right? And then you finally lean on Marcus Smart as like the de facto point guard. And then you decide to move on to the most optimal version of what they need at the point guard position in Drew Holiday, who a lot of people would compare Jalen Suggs to Drew Holiday in a handful of different ways. I think the most important thing is that Drew Holiday plays a more cerebral game, both offensively and defensively. I think that similar to Marcus Smart, Jalen Suggs is a lot more of a hustle style player. I think defensively, again, Marcus Smart won a defensive player of the year. I think there's a lot of comparisons you can make that are a lot closer to Jalen Suggs being similar to Marcus Smart than Jalen Suggs being similar to Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday is a much more cerebral player. I think he's a much more pass first player. I think he's a guy that can still be very effective on the offensive end, even if his three ball isn't falling. I think that defensively, he does not take nearly as much of a gamble, right? I think he's much better of a help defender. And I'm talking about in the iteration of Drew Holiday when he was on that Boston Celtics team. Of course, he's regressed with playing with teams, playing with like the Portland Trailblazers, for example. But again, that team is, a lot worse than the Boston Celtics championship team was. But also, I mean, like, he's older, right, by a few years by that point. But I think there's a lot of good comparisons to make between Jalen Suggs and Marcus Smart. One of them being the fact that a lot of people would call Marcus Smart the heartbeat of the team at the time. And it's hilarious how you remove the heartbeat and the team has more life in it as a postseason contender, as a real championship contender, when you remove the heartbeat than when the heartbeat was at the forefront of their team. Right? Or at least one of the key contributors to that team. I think Jalen Suggs is very, very similar to that. So I'm not saying you move Jalen Suggs and they're instantly going to win a championship, which is essentially what the Boston Celtics did. But I do think that there is a correlation, so to speak, to getting a different point guard that fits the bill a little bit more to what this Orlando Magic team needs, and making that change to this team's upside moving forward. Now, very similar to what Kasedic said, the coach doesn't help either. And I think that's a change that also needs to be made. Look at the fact that Brad Stevens stepped away, went into a GM role, and they picked up Ime Udoka. Now, I would say that even the transition from Ime Udoka to Joe Mazzulla mattered in the grand scheme of this team becoming a real champion. So even that Boston Celtics team went through a phase where they had to make a coaching change. And Brad Stevens was labeled as like the boy wonder. Now, Jamal Mosley did not have that tagged next to him, but his defensive upside and the player development as far as getting young players to play defense was a calling card that really carried him into coach of the year conversations just 2 years ago. So there's a lot of comparison between that Boston Celtics team and this Orlando Magic team, where I think they make a coaching change and you rip the Band-Aid off with Jalen Suggs, and I think you'll see a very different Orlando Magic team in just a year, maybe 2 years max. Let's move on to the next comment because there's a lot of them. A1 Dawn, the truth said they can kiss the playoff chances goodbye. You're probably right, but in a sick and twisted way, like I said before, I feel like this team is going to sneak in as an 8 seed, and then we'll go from there. Toe Life Channel says, I feel bad for Mosley because I feel he really is a great coach and a great human being, period. I feel like these players need a mean-ass coach that ain't afraid to call his players out, and Jamal never does that. But they're making way too much money to be giving the effort they're giving. Anyway, go Magic. Kasedic says, NBA is not about who is a good person. It's about players and coaches' connection. If you play organized basketball, know better. The coach click with the team is more important than having talent. Best example is the Miami Heat organization. In response, said, for real, Miami always has competitive teams regardless of talent. I would say be careful comparing the Orlando Magic to the Miami Heat when it comes to that, because you also have to remember that very similarly, the Miami Heat have been competitive regardless of their talent and have pretty much plateaued in any version of their team that hasn't had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, or Jimmy Butler on them. All guys that I think are like bona fide Hall of Famers. Now, of course, I think Dwayne Wade, already in that spot. LeBron James, automatic, basically a Hall of Famer while still playing basketball. And Jimmy Butler, I think long term will be considered as a Hall of Fame guy. What we say about guys like Bam Adebayo and things of that nature, questionable. But I think that basically, unless they've had a Hall of Famer at the fray, like Miami's always been good, but never viewed as a real contender. So realize that yes, they've been able to do that with Eric Spoelstra, but because of the talent situation, they have topped out as a team that's like good, but nobody really fears long term. So just keep that in mind. A1 Dawn the Truth doubles down. It says, I told you guys they're not making the playoffs. Hector says they will be in the play-in at minimum. It's essentially a lock now. Facts. Cassetic says, if we don't make it to the playoffs, everybody should lose their job. Shaq would love to run the whole show. He knows who he needs to work with, from scouts to the water boy. A1 says, I'm not sure if that will be a good idea, because we see many times that players that used to play the game was good players but not good at managing teams. They suck at scouting players and all that, from Jordan himself as the GOAT. Jordan has never drafted a good player. Also, I just think that Shaq is very out of touch with today's version of the NBA. I think that's been proven plenty of times when you look at, his work on Inside the NBA. No disrespect to him at the end of the day. I would say that Inside the NBA is a good representation of what entertainment in basketball discourse looks like, as opposed to what I would say is more of a strong analytical base for building a team would probably consider. Like, I don't think that anybody that, as a player, and no disrespect to them, but I don't think any former player that is, for example, working with Inside the NBA, or let's say even ESPN to a lesser degree, where I think that there's more of an entertainment factor to their functionality around the game right now, I don't think they would fit very well as a coach in today's NBA, because I don't think they look at the league from this type of lens that, for example, the Orlando Magic need, which is progressively. I look at a lot of the former players on NBC, and I think that, like Carmelo Anthony, for example, to a lesser degree, the Vince Carters of the world, Dirk Nowitzki. I think of those guys when I think of the idea of like more of an analytical mindset. And I'm not saying that the Orlando Magic necessarily need like a stats nerd to take over, but I think we need somebody who's more progressive as far as this team is moving forward. I don't think that we need Shaq saying, hey, Paolo Banchero, I need you to go down to the low post and we need 15 post touches. Or I don't need it to be where like Shaquille O'Neal is like, hey, we got to figure out a way to get Wendell Carter to be a 17 and 11 guy. Like, I don't think that's the approach. And that's kind of the mentality that Shaquille O'Neal kind of speaks on the game with. And I don't think the Orlando Magic need that. Anyway, though. I see what you're saying, but I'm not super crazy about like former player coach. Think even like Penny Hardaway and stuff like that, right? Like Penny Hardaway with Memphis. Like, yes, his name brings talent, but like that Memphis team has not done very much, and he's had like multiple, top 10, top 15 recruiting classes, and like it hasn't amounted to very much success in college, and also, quite frankly, hasn't even led to very much success in the form of like NBA talent. Imani Bates, Boogie Ellis, James Wiseman. Like it hasn't reflected. All of the talent was theoretical. A1610 says, as a Magic fan, I do not want Giannis. Primarily because of the age, contract situation, and the fact that he is starting to show signs of being more injury prone. So basically, everything about Giannis Antetokounmpo except for the fact that talent-wise, he still is like a double-double caliber guy. But everything else about Giannis Antetokounmpo is basically why you don't want him. Totally fair and agree with that, by the way. The only way I would consider that trade is if it were clearly lopsided in Orlando's favor, something centered around Suggs and Wendell Carter Jr. I still believe Paolo at the 5 makes the most sense. I agree with you, by the way. I was looking at one of the centers that would be sought out after this offseason in Walker Kessler. Listed at 7 foot, 245 pounds. His weight is less than PB5. Small ball 5 could work. I would rather trade Suggs for 2 solid, reliable bench players who can provide consistent production and availability. In response to that, Kassetic, who, by the way, has been very active under this video. Shout out to you, my boy. I don't think I've seen you in the comment section before this, but I'm happy to have you as a new subscriber or as a long-standing subscriber that's just feeling a little bit more comfortable responding in the comment section. Love to see that from you. Says, we need Luka and we win 3 championships in 5 years. I mean, okay, fair. I mean, that's going to need some legs to it. Rich Singh says, facts, the media is trashing trying to force Giannis here. That would be a bad idea. Go younger and get picks back. I mean, I think there's 2 main focuses. I think that we need to build out the bench. And if we can get some real draft capital, I think that late first round picks / early second round picks for the Orlando Magic could go a really long way. But we'll talk about that more during the offseason. I have a lot of offseason content planned in advance. Trust me. Next up, Kind Steak Pool says, Jeff drafted Giannis. He has a great connection with him. PB5, J.I., Jace Richardson for Giannis makes sense for both teams. Julian says, I'm happy you brought up Jeff Weltman because I'm disappointed in J.I. in that J.I. contract. So is everyone else. Kassetic says the problem is in Orlando is the owners. They hired mediocre employee, offer a job to Shaq and Dennis Scott to be the Pat Riley head of franchise. I'm not gonna lie, Kassetic, there's a lot of nostalgia in your thoughts around the Orlando Magic, and I don't necessarily hate it, but I don't necessarily love it either. The Jeff Weltman Giannis connection, I do think, is a good one. P5, J.I., and Jace, I actually think is like almost a little too aggressive. I'm not going to lie to you. I think the upside of Jace is a lot, especially when you look at the fact that, honestly, from a financial standpoint, like P5, almost bar for bar, financially is right there with Giannis, and then has a full 5 years to Giannis only having 2 years. Like, P5, if we're giving up P5 and J.I., like that's almost more than enough by itself. Like, I don't think you need to sweeten the pot with another young player who's cost controlled when you are getting P5 for like full 5 years. Like, if you're trading P5, you're almost doing it like dang near as a straight up trade. So, like, I don't love that trade very much at all. Plus, I think J.I.'s getting waived at the end of the year anyway. So, I mean, there's that too. Sharp T9 says, I wouldn't trade Paolo or Franz for Giannis. I'll give up Suggs in a heartbeat. If you can keep Paolo, Franz, and only trade like Suggs and Wendell Carter and maybe another young piece in that situation to get Giannis, I mean, then I'm on board. But yeah, I don't love the idea of trading Paolo or Franz for Giannis either. I think that if we trade Suggs, though, I think we should be trying to go more aggressively at trying to build that point guard spot up. D-Lo Florida says, we be talking about who the Magic going to trade for after last night. We might need to prepare for who might ask for a trade. I can see dudes not even wanting to play for this team no more after how things been looking lately. I think you're referring to Paolo Banchero's comments about wanting to play with Scotty Barnes. Oh Lord. And I was almost gonna address this on the podcast, but I didn't want to give it too much sea legs because at the end of the day, like, I don't think Paolo Banchero's going anywhere, and I definitely don't think he's going to like Toronto, because what does that even look like, right? What is that like? RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, and like a Jamal Shed or someone of that ilk traded for. That would probably, I mean, they maybe that would be like, I wouldn't love this because we still have Jalen Suggs on the roster, but financially that would be either RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickley. I'd rather have RJ Barrett, to be frank, but that kind of doubles down with Franz Wagner. But I don't want Emmanuel Quickley because I don't think Emmanuel Quickley fits in a backcourt next to Jalen Suggs and Desmond Bane. So it'd probably be like RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl's $20 million a year contract, which is kind of gross, but he would be, a really good, starting center option in competition with Wendell Carter Jr. And then another player like maybe Grady Dick, who's fallen out of favor there with Toronto a little bit in exchange for Paolo. I don't love that though. I don't love that, and I just don't think there's any real legs around a Paolo to Toronto Raptors trade. So, I mean, but I totally hear what you're saying though, D-Lo, as far as like it is getting kind of wicked. Kassetic again says, I'm sick with the Orlando Magic management. Is one bad move over another, but the big problem is Jamal Mosley. Bring Michael Malone. It's time to bring in a coach with playoff experience, and like he was fired by Denver after a championship, it's time to give him a good team with talent. He can help Banchero and young talent. If Orlando uses the coach change, we have at least 16 more games to play for a championship with or without Wagner or Black. Just see how it was with Boston without Tatum. So to end the subject, fire today Jamal Mosley. Okay, even if they fired Jamal Mosley today, they would not hire Mike Malone and they would just like go into the playoffs. Like, I think that Michael Malone would be an off-season signing, first off. But second off, I totally agree with you that Mike Malone has the upside, where I sometimes kind of view the idea of Michael Malone being the just the right upgrade compared to maybe a Taylor Jenkins, who I think I favor Taylor Jenkins a little bit more because he has the connection with Desmond Bane. He's shown player development. He's shown offensive versatility, and he's shown the ability to develop bench talent, which I think is probably the missing link for this team, is getting better bench talent and then deploying bench talent in a way where they can win with, 9 to 10 guys throughout the regular season. My worry with Taylor Jenkins is I think he falls too in love with this 10-man rotation come postseason time. That's where Michael Malone, I think, is a little bit better, because I think he knows coming playoff time how to get down to the crunch guys of like the 7 to 8 main dudes that need to play once comes playoff time. So yeah. Mr. Moore says, bro, the Giannis trade really has legs. First thing is Weltman drafted Giannis. When he was the GM with the Milwaukee Bucks. There was a trade offered during the deadline. Bucks wanted A, B, and Franz. Paolo cannot get traded because his rookie contract hasn't kicked in. His max rookie extension, I think you're referring to. During the offseason, Paolo can be traded for Giannis. I know that that's the case. I just don't think they should. I think that's the biggest thing. I just don't think they should. Ad Spain says the Magic front office needs to call the Haitian national soccer team for some inspiration. For real. Hey, man. Call them, do the whole song and dance, maybe make it the intro music, whatever you got to do. But, Lord have mercy. Like, this team is, I don't even know. Theory says, yes, we need a new coach and a new GM too. Hey, bro, let's start petitioning now. Sharp T9 says, yeah, Mosley have been testing our intelligence. Yes, he spent all of that post-game press conference repeating himself, basically giving PR answers, basically trying to call his team soft without calling his team soft, because I don't think he's trying to upset the apple cart any more than he already has, while also, quite frankly, showing that he doesn't have very much more to add as far as explaining where this team is, besides just saying, we need to play hard. We need to play hard. We need to be more prepared. We need to have more urgency. Those are all tangible things. Those are all intangibles. Like, those are all like, you got it or you don't. We're beyond that portion of the season. Like, if you're not prepared at game 73, you're just not prepared. Like, what are we talking about here? If we're at game 73, we're still having questions about urgency, you just don't have any. So now you have to go beyond that, and it's like, okay, so how do you put this team in the best position to win, regardless of where their heart is? That's where we're at. Berto the Magician had a couple of comments. I'm actually just going to read them in group. He said, the reason I mentioned before that Key and Peele need to do a skit on Jamal Mosley is because of his corporate and tiptoe to the obvious answers. Michael Key would kill it. Hey, I don't disagree with you. And the tiptoeing is ridiculous and getting on my nerves. Not to mention, they had 2 days to prepare. They had a whole season to adjust. If this loss isn't a Shawn Michaels sweet chin music kick to the organization's face, then I do not know what will work. In response to that, Jeff Frazier said this was a Brock Lesnar F5 suplex city to the organization. Totally agree. Kassetic said Orlando always been the worst franchise in the whole NBA. Their philosophy to bring real good staff is a big BS or issue. Miami shows how to run an NBA franchise. It's interesting that Miami keeps being provoked. Bertha Magician in response said, I think worst is a stretch. The past 30 years they've been to the finals twice. They've had years where they had a solid team. You sound like a Heat fan. The Heat haven't accomplished anything, unfortunately, since LeBron left, other than going to the finals, which isn't bad. I think. No, he just said it twice. Saying the Heat show how a franchise should be run, I think is very naive. They haven't been horrible, but they have not been great. They've been good, B or B plus. I completely agree with this statement. I think it's so interesting that you keep it that whoever. I don't know if it's just you, Cassette. I gotta go back and double check. But like invoking Miami is such an interesting comparison. Number one, there's definitely been worse franchise than Orlando over the last couple of years. Like Utah has been an absolute mess despite having Danny Ainge. They're playing the long game in a way that almost you never know when the long game ends. Now you think it starts next year. They get AJ DeMonta with the lottery pick. They keep Larry Markkinen. They brought in Jaren Jackson Jr. You bring back Walker Kessler, and you have Keontae George as a solid point guard spot. You also drafted Ace Bailey last year. You have a foundation that now looks like a team that looks like they seriously want to compete in ways that like the Portland Trailblazers kind of are right now, where like they're not going to be like super dangerous as a playoff team, but like they look like a team that night to night basis over the course of 82 games you worry about. But like Utah has not been a great ran franchise, over the last couple of years post Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. The Sacramento Kings, very terribly ran. Washington Wizards, I think everything post John Wall, Bradley Beal era, even honestly those last few years of Bradley Beal, I think are even like looped into that. But you can make the argument that that's from the minute they signed that extension with John Wall, they have been a terribly ran franchise up until very recently. I'm not going to list every franchise that I think has done a really bad job because I don't think that this is like the platform for it. But like, I think also Miami has found themselves in the name in the running for so many superstars, and nobody goes to them. Kawhi, Kevin Durant, Paul George, a possible LeBron James return. Right? There's been a handful of different times that the Miami Heat have been invoked in conversations around a big fish. Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, and they never seem to land anybody. So like there's this super well-ran franchise, yet they always kind of end up being like mediocre to like middle of the pack at best, and they can never seem to sign a big name free agent despite being a team that's viewed as this like crazy market. Like I think that's actually hilarious to keep evoking them because like they haven't really done anything. Like to be honest, they really haven't done anything super crazy. Tyler Hero is in trade conversations every single year. People are worried about whether or not Paulo McGarry, worried about whether or not Bam Adebayo has plateaued and has found himself as maybe like the third best player on a championship team, maybe second best player on a championship team at best, instead of a real franchise pillar. Like, there's a lot of questions about the team building aspect of the Miami Heat that I don't think you can make them like as this gold standard for roster building. I'm not really sure what's up with that. Lastly, with Berto Magician, he said, "I'm glad you recognize that clearly our best players are giving corporate answers when they know it's been a coaching issue since October. Hell, when Paulo said they didn't have a game plan in the beginning of the season, I knew something was up." Completely agree, and I think I touched on it back then. Like the mere fact that Paulo Banchero and Jamal Mosley got into that mini spat about the idea of like, okay, is it effort or is it adjustments? I was like, wait a minute. Both of you have an argument here, but if we're being realistic, if we're keeping it a buck, there comes a point where we can't just keep pounding the table about effort. Like there does come a point where you have to go, where you as Jamal Mosley can't just keep questioning your team's effort. Like you do need to go out there and coach this team. They are still a young team. They are a young team with high expectations. Very high expectations coming into the season. You do need to coach. And that's why I keep saying that I think Jamal Mosley has gotten away with simply being able to say, I get my guys to play defense. And other than that, I'm riding the coattails of the fact that Paulo Banchero, number 1 overall pick. Franz Wagner, lottery pick. Jalen Suggs, lottery pick. Anthony Black, lottery pick. Wendell Carter, lottery pick. Desmond Bane, former MIP winner. Right? Like Tristan da Silva, taken just outside of the lottery. Like when you go down the list, like Orlando's like top 6 7, maybe 8 guys when the roster is fully healthy are all guys that are like legit, right, like taken right outside the lottery, or taken within, not even just taken outside of, taken within the lottery, taken within the top 8. Like 4 or 5 of the guys I named were taken within the first 8 picks of the NBA draft. Oh, so I got 4 to 5 top 8 picks on my roster, and I get them to play hard. That's how he's been getting away with murder for the last couple of years, I think. Because he hasn't developed as an offensive coach at all over the course of the last 4 seasons. And it showed, because now, when he doesn't have Anthony Black, when he misses Paulo Banchero, when he misses Franz Wagner for majority of the season, he's able to coach stretches. This team is able to put some stretches together, but they're super inconsistent. Last couple of comments. A1 Dawn the Truth says Mosley is a radio on repeat. We keep hearing the same things over and over, and that's when you know you need a new voice. When you feel like when you feel like you have the record player coach, that's when you have to make a decision about getting a new voice in the room. Because if we feel that way, how do you think the players feel? Rafael Macho says, with a 2-day rest before this game, unacceptable loss. Completely agree with you, bro. There's no way in the world that you can even remotely convince me that preparation was the problem coming into this game. Like, that doesn't even make any freaking sense. Last but not least, James Estrella says, what's good, brother? What's good, my brother? Best show ever. You nailed it, bro. Enough said. Season has been a roller coaster, and I'm just waiting on our date to come where we go home and pack it and start thinking what this poor and embarrassing back office is going to do, or I guess you mean front or back office. Are you saying that to be funny? I'm speechless. The only thing that keeps me motivated is your show and how you keep it 100 on what's going on. I hope the Magic back office hears your show and knows that something needs to knows that they need to make something happen, or we will just be the team that is known for half-assing how far we can compete. And Toe Life responded underneath that and said, couldn't have put it better myself. First off, thank you, James Estrella. You've been like, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. You don't understand. I was just talking to my wife the other day about like how comments like these are the ones that keep me going, dude. To know that I'm part of the reason you stay locked in on the Magic, despite all of the irritation that this team has created over the course of this season, that matters to me more than anything. The subscriber count, road to 1,000, and all that stuff like that is great. But again, I'm so much more focused on building like a real community in this space, and comments like that make me feel like I'm actually building something, right? And that's huge. But number two, I also agree with you in the sense that I also hope that they listen to podcasts like this one, listen to podcasts like Locked On Magic and things of that nature, where like real discourse is being had about this team, and podcasters like me, and hopefully other podcasters within the space, are keeping it real about what this team is and who they're going to be moving forward. And I hope that this leads to a summer where this team really looks in the mirror. I think this team has gotten away with Jamal Mosley being able to coach up young talent to play defense for a long time. This team has gotten away with Jeff Weltman being able to just make small moves on the margins, but not necessarily do anything besides, make the right draft pick when they have a lottery pick. And other than that, not really do much else. Like, they have not made many free agency moves in the last 4 to 5 years. We've seen young talent hit the roster that when you look around the league, there's a bunch of other situations where their development or the player they nailed outside of the lottery ends up being much better than the identified talent that the Orlando Magic land. I remember when you guys discussed the Tyrese Maxey versus the Tyrese Maxey or Tyler Hero versus your Cole Anthonys versus your Chuma Okekes, right? Like, I look back at draft classes like those and I'm like, okay, wow, when the Magic didn't have nearly as obvious of a pick at the draft spot, look how different they draft when it's not an obvious this is the guy you should go with versus when the pick is automatic. there was a debate between Paulo, Chet, and oh my goodness. You guys know what I'm talking about from Houston. The Jabari Smith. Excuse me. I didn't want to forget that. There was a debate, but like Paulo Banchero like was kind of like a consensus number one overall pick throughout that entire collegiate season. So he still felt like a very obvious number one talent, even if he might not have been the perfect number one fit for the Magic at the time when he was drafted. Excuse me again. I've referenced this before in a lot of redrafts for the year that for the year that Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner were drafted. The only thing that most redrafts do differently is just draft them in reverse order, right? Anthony Black, I think, was easily the best talent at the time when he was picked up, right? Like when you go down the list, like the ones that were obvious, there were no misses. They didn't necessarily miss because they got like the quote unquote best talent available. But some of those other draft picks, they didn't do nearly as well. So I think they've gotten away with Jeff Weltman not being as great of a talent evaluator. I think they've gotten away with Jamal Mosley just being able to coach defense. And other than that, get away with the fact that the talent is, stacked towards primarily lottery pick talent on the roster right now. And I think they've gotten away with the fact that they really have treated their guys really well too, I think, right? Like I think the comfortability of paying a Jonathan Isaac for being an elder statesman and not necessarily going out there and aggressively looking for a talent upgrade at the center position over Wendell Carter Jr. or not being willing to acknowledge that Jalen Suggs has not played more than 60 games outside of, I think, one season. And giving him that lucrative contract extension. Again, team friendly because it's descending, but still. Like, I think those are the kind of conversations where you're like, although they're being kind to the team, to the players of their team, and you want that as an organization to know that they support their guys, I think it also takes away the need to make, or the feeling of making tough decisions on those same guys because of the emotional attachment created. This team needs to make some changes. Pod's already an hour, man, so we're going to go ahead and end with the question of the day. I'm not going to answer it myself. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Question of the day is, when do you think Jamal Mosley will be fired? Do you think if we lose to the Phoenix Suns, it's finally time to pull it, as if the loss to the Toronto Raptors wasn't enough? Do you think that this is already too far gone to the point that you think that the Orlando Magic are not going to make any kind of real decision on Jamal Mosley until after the season is over? Do you see Jamal Mosley maybe even making it through the playoffs? Whether the Orlando Magic make it or not, do you think that maybe like they'll wait until the actual full season is over, an NBA champion has been crowned and everything else under the sun, and then Jamal Mosley is fired? Not when do you think he should be fired. I'm interested to hear what you guys think is when he will be fired. Not when you think he should, but when you actually think he will be. Because I think those are two different answers. I think a lot of us would say maybe right now, if we saying when he should, coming off that Toronto Raptors loss, I think that would have been a perfect eject seat to go ahead and give him the can. But I think the mere fact that he hasn't been fired yet coming off of that loss indicates that maybe him being fired in the coming weeks is not as obvious as it may seem. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section down below. Thank you for those who may have stuck this long into the podcast. Shout out to you as always. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So hit that post notification bell. Shout out to our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. QR code in the right-hand corner or the link in the description. And I'll talk to you guys again later. This has been the Magic Lady Podcast.